Morning, friends and family. IB here. This is my sixth, I believe, Hold the Door video. I'm sorry that it's been so long since I've made one. I've been struggling to come up with a topic. I have a lot of ideas from books that I want to talk about, but I don't own a lot of these books because of my recent move to Hawaii, and I left a lot of my books in Maine. And then the other fact is, even some of the books that I have and their subjects I really want to talk about. Like, for example, I'm really interested in doing a little video on Boromir from the Fellowship of the Ring, and talking about his character and his weakness and his failures. And the thing we love about Boromir is that he finished strong. Um, and I think that's what's important to us. But anyways, the thing I'm struggling with that is I haven't actually read the Fellowship of the Ring in so long, and I haven't had the time to actually like sit and read the book. And even now, I was thinking, well, maybe I should for this video sit and read the Fellowship of the Ring for a bit, but it felt inorganic to do it that way, and I felt like I should talk about something that has been on my mind and something that I've been working with and dealing with. So I'm struggling to speak about anything within a book, because the only book I've been lately reading is the Bible, because it's all I only have time to read so much, and the Bible's the most important thing for me to be reading. So that said, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about in this video right now. I have tried to pray and ask for guidance of what to talk about, so I don't know if this video is going to turn into much. This might just be a draft that I cast out, but I actually have faith that God is going to give me something good to talk about. So I think the main thing to touch upon here is that I know that when I go periods of time without posting these videos, it's because I'm processing some kind of sin. And in this case, I think the sin that I'm struggling with, since it's been, I think, a week or two since I posted one of these Hold the Door videos, where I've made an attempt to witness and I've made an attempt to speak out publicly, in a sense, about my faith. I think the sin that's holding me back from making these videos is often fear that I am not worthy of making these videos, fear that I am somehow not Christian enough. And I think the thing to do oftentimes when we feel like that as Christians is to confess and repent. So this is breaking that cycle, in a sense, of publicly coming out and saying, like, the reason I haven't made one of these videos is because I'm struggling with this sin of doubt and this sin of pride, that it's my own works and it's my own gifts that makes these videos quality, instead of praying for faith and putting my faith in God, that I could come here and turn on my phone and say, God, please help me to witness, even if I'm embarrassing myself. Let it be a part of my sanctification and maybe a signpost for another person to find you. And instead, I get wrapped up in thinking about how good or smart or interesting I'm going to be in the video. And of course, that doesn't really help my spirit very much, does it? That's more about the world and the rewards of being here on earth. So anyways, this is my attempt to break that cycle and humble myself before this a little bit. So that said, if I were to talk a little bit more about what I've been going through, it would be to say that I'm struggling, in a sense, to find the words to say why I'm having these kinds of doubts and these shortcomings, and maybe, in a sense, struggling to find the little spark of inspiration that comes from the word, or comes from some encouragement from one of my brothers or sisters in the faith. So maybe I'll share one thing that has been encouraging lately, which is that if you've seen my first video on here, you'll know that I had this dream a while ago that kind of helped bring me back to the faith. And I believe it was a God-given dream. Of course, I can't know that, but I feel like it was a God-given dream. It felt pretty explicit and pretty obvious. And I think God, for people like me who lack faith, and people like me who like thinking that we're so intelligent, as to hide in ignorance, that God makes things very obvious for us sometimes. And it's a sign of our ignorance that he has to make it so obvious for us to understand. And he did in this dream. He made it quite obvious that I should come back to the church. And in this dream, I spoke about a person who I grew up with in the church, who kind of appeared to me in the dream, and who had also died within a few days of that dream. And I felt fairly, I almost want to say prophetic, but if not prophetic, then it just felt very spiritually charged and powered. So the thing I want to talk about that's encouraging is I've recently heard that the family of that man who has passed and who was, I think, largely responsible for the Christian seed being planted in me as a little boy. I believe that he is. His family recently saw that video that I made, and I can't know this for sure. I wasn't there, and you can never know what a person feels like, but it seems as though that it moved them and it was helpful for them, and that is incredibly encouraging for me to know that. It helps me feel like I am on the right track with these videos, and while they may not be astounding or profound theological discourses, it is encouraging to know that I'm encouraging or that I'm moving people in some little way. So if you're watching this, any of the family or friends of Dick, and you have seen that video, or you know what I'm talking about, then thank you for taking the time to see these, and I appreciate you very much. So that was the big thing for me this week that really kind of inspired my faith, and I think it's the reason I'm sitting here again, is hearing that somebody had actually seen these videos and liked it and cared about that. It's been a while that I've been looking for a reason to talk and a subject of interest to talk about, and that is a sign to me that there is something here worth doing. Anyways, I would like to actually talk about something, and this is what happens when I don't have a plan. I just, go out on a wing and a prayer, so to say, and hopefully I haven't lost any of you because of my rambling. I expect that at any moment the rambling will cease and I'll hit the true vein of what I'm supposed to be talking about here. Another big thing that's been coming up in my mind is the election. And it's a great time to be sucked back into the world. It's a great time to be really obsessed with the outcomes of worldly decisions and worldly things. And I am no less worldly than anyone else. I'm very worldly. And I'm worldly oftentimes in quite petty ways, just, indulgences and comforts and things, kind of like a hobbit or something. But this time in this season of my life has really shed some interesting light on me that for one of the first times in my life, I have solace because of my conversion and because of my salvation. I have solace in this time of upheaval, knowing that it's the 5th today. So it's the morning of the 5th. We're going to find out who our president is tonight. I don't really have. I have an opinion of who would be a better president for our country. I'm not going to say it here, but I don't have a lot of. Frankly, I don't have a lot of faith in our in our system or in our government or in our population to make that president actually mean that our country is going to be better. And I similarly don't have really any idea what's going to happen if the other person gets voted in. It's just so far beyond me, and frankly, it feels like we're kind of spiraling here as a country. I've been feeling this way for a long time. I pray for a golden age for our country, and I pray that, and I think that's what any president wants, right? They want to be the one to inspire a golden age in the country, to bring back peace and prosperity, and unity between the people. I mean, I hate to see all this disunity between the parties and between the races and between the genders even. I mean, it's insane and I don't like it. But my point is that there's really nothing I can do about that. And my one vote, like, frankly, I don't think there's any really power in that one vote. I think it's deluding myself to think that there is. So in this time, it's kind of like watching a football game and really, really caring who wins. And when your team loses and you feel sick to your stomach because your team loses, you can kind of sit there and wonder, like, what was the point in that? Like, the Patriots lost, and I cared so much, and I had nothing, I had no control over it, and nothing. Who cares? Now, obviously, with the presidential election, you can be arguing, yes, well, but my taxes and my gas prices and this and that matters. It's like, yes, sir or lady, but do you not know also that even if gas prices go down, or even if your what would we call it? What are they saying now? What are you saying now? Your reproductive rights are protected, or your fetuses are protected, whatever side of the spectrum you fall on. Don't you realize that God is working all of these factors and formulas behind the scenes, and that even if gas prices go down, or even if your reproductive rights are productive and you protected and you feel safe for a little while, don't you see that that could still lead to the doom of our country? Whoever's elected, it doesn't matter. And this isn't meant to be a doom and gloom type speech. It's meant to be the fact that it is doom and gloom, whether we accept it or not. And that's always how it's been intended. If you're a Christian and you read the Bible, you should know this. In terms of the secular world, at least, this is a doom and gloom story. In many ways, the crescendo of this great telling that leads up to the great climax of Jesus' return, if you want to call it that the climax. As Paul says, the birthing pains are increasing and growing worse. And if the climax is the birth of Jesus for a second time, which I believe it will be, then this is the great crescendo of pain, and it's worse. It's getting worse and worse. So to put our faith in secular activities, to put our faith in two clearly non-Christian people and their non-Christian cabinets, and put our faith in dollars and airplanes and tanks and doctors and procedures and whatever vaccines, or less money for Ukraine or more money for Ukraine, like whatever. If you want to put your faith in that to solve the world, like, you're kind of forgetting the big picture. And I'm not the first person to be saying this. Of course, I've actually been taught this by other people who are saying this. And it's what I'm trying to say is that it's very inspiring to me to know that for one of the first times, it doesn't matter who wins the football game. It doesn't matter who wins the political election. It doesn't really matter the price of gas. And you can say it does. And of course I care. And I'll be happy or sad to some extent about the outcome of all these things. But I think the important thing that I've learned, and to reflect on, all of us to reflect on, is that will we not be miserable about some of these things forever in this life? Will we not always be cursing some outcome and cursing some little detail or many details? If Trump gets elected, will the Trump supporters not be always mad about some other thing? And if if Kamala gets elected, won't the Kamala supporters always be bitching about some other thing? Like, won't there always be disunities of whoever wins? And at a certain point, it is like, yeah, and that's why it's not the main focus. I've heard people say Jesus isn't on the ballot, and that's kind of a cool way of putting it. Like, not only in the sense of like Jesus himself, who is our king and who is our leader and who is our rightful master. He's not on the ballot, and also he's not being represented on the ballot. I mean, he's not. You can argue, well, one of them goes to church and the other one gets prayed over by people, but I think we're all pretty clear that he's not really being quoted, spoken, or taught by our leaders in this world. Some of them, a few of them, but not, especially not in America, not now. Anyways, I'm not a political person. I don't pay attention to this, so it's something I can't comment on too much. But I am just trying to explain that my faith has been rewarded in this time, where my sense of peace has increased, knowing that it's supposed to get worse. I mean, it is. It's supposed to get worse until it gets perfect. That's the story we're told. that story has been modeled and reflected and twisted and told again, again, and again in all these stories that we love. I mean, one of the reasons I came to Christianity is because I love stories. And I see more and more how the story of Jesus is the root story of all the fictional stories that I like. So the true story of Jesus is the root story of all the fictional stories. And how true is it in every story that you love that just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse? And it's like evil, 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 evil grows, evil gets worse. Voldemort has invaded Hogwarts, and Harry's dead, and George, I think it was George is dead, and like all these people are Lavender Brown, all these people that you knew and loved are dead, and all of a sudden like the good comes. And that's just one story. But like that's you can go to a movie and watch a terrible modern Hollywood movie and in the secular world, and people still understand this is like what we trust. We trust that it gets worse and worse and worse and worse, but it will get good again. And I think maybe it's worth believing for some of you, maybe even for me, that it's worth believing that it will get worse and worse and worse, and then we will get the right president into the cabinet, into the office, and with the right cabinet and the right policies and the right population and the right laws and changes, and for a long enough time, and it will get better, and that will be the healing thing that happens. And I'm almost laughing a little bit as I say that because it sounds ridiculous. And I know that some of you want to believe that, but the Bible doesn't say that that's what's going to happen unless that person is Jesus. And up until Jesus is that person, it's going to get worse and worse. Now, do you think Kamala Harris or Donald Trump is Jesus? I don't. That's obvious they're not. So it's going to keep getting worse. We might have little spikes of, oh, it's better now. And maybe we should hope for that again. We should always be trying to make it better. I agree. But not at the expense of recognizing that it's going to keep getting worse also until it gets better. And to say this and to believe it and to smile and laugh is partially possible by me that I'm so removed from it. I'm sitting in my bedroom making a video. I don't see the apocalypse happening around me in this moment. And if it were, if you know, God's judgment for the earth and the Antichrist and all these things were to be really encroaching upon my person and my flesh, I would probably not be sitting here giddy and laughing, being like, oh, thanks for the Holy Spirit, and thanks be that Jesus is coming back. We're all saved. It's easy to say this now in theory, but I think that's the point of being a Christian, any discipline, including being a disciple of Christ. Disciple means learner, I think, is important to remember also. So to be a disciple, to be learning this way is, as you learn, you train. And training is so that you can apply your training in the real situation. I touched upon this in the David Slings 10,000s video. It's important to know that any soldier or fighter or person, your training kicks in, because when the real deal happens, you will respond worse. So to believe, well, if the apocalypse happens, then I'll just kick into optimism mode and know that Jesus has saved me. It's like, yes, if you train, you might, but it's going to be a lot harder when evil is breaking down the doors of your world and making your life hell. And knowing that you're going to part with your life and your body, because that's what death is, and that's maybe what the end of the world is. Now, am I claiming that the end of the world is upon us? Oh, no, I have no idea, but I do have my theories that as the world spirals down to that bad place, as is prophesied in the Bible, and as the man of lawlessness approaches, and as the birthing pains of Christ increase in urgency and intensity, I do think that it will feel more and more like the end of the world every year, every decade, until that happens. And who knows when that ends? I don't get to decide that, and I don't want to know even. But it's just worth acknowledging that even if I can sit here and kind of acknowledge that it's going to suck. And it's going to be hard, and maybe you'll know what I mean in a time. I also think it's important to remember that there is a discipline, and there is a training for the end of the world to be working on. And if my lifetime doesn't see the end of the world, then maybe for your kids or for the little wards that you take under your discipleship when you when you become an older person, whether it's nephews and nieces or just friends or students or whatever. But there's something to be teaching people about the end of the world. And many of us are preppers, and many of us believe in having weapons and having plenty of canned goods. Or some of us, it's about training for combat or training to fight off the government or fight off China, or maybe it's about fighting off the police, or maybe whatever you have in your head of like, this is how I'm going to prepare for the end of the world, because the end of the world means zombies and viruses and famine and war. I mean, yeah, the Bible says all that to some extent. I don't know about zombies, but the Bible doesn't ask us to train to survive battle and to hoard food in our house. The Bible asks us to prepare for the day of the Lord and the coming of Christ. And one thing I've struggled to reconcile is, well, if most of us won't actually be alive when that day is, then how do we prepare for that? And the answer that I've kind of come to is that it's by emulating Jesus and the apostles, of course, and in a sense to do that, as I just said, which is to prepare yourself and to teach, knowing that Jesus came here and died for our sins so that we could be saved. And he put a life of work into saving. I mean, again, I've said this before in videos, but when Jesus wasn't teaching or eating or doing what a human does, he was oftentimes healing physically. So he had a job, he had work, he was a healer, he healed the body. And I think it's important to remember that we can emulate Jesus and we can emulate the apostles by doing these things. But in the sense of, how do we prepare for the apocalypse? How do we handle this election that could start World War III or a civil war? How do we handle this knowledge that my one vote is just kind of washed away in the multitude, and who knows if the voting machines are right, and who knows if the vote has already been decided by the Illuminati, whatever you want to say. And I'm not saying I believe in that, I was just kind of making a joke. But if you are having these doubts and these fears, and you're getting wrapped up in the election, and you're getting wrapped up in the outcome of the election, or the outcome of Ukraine and Israel, or all these things, it's important to bring it back, I think, to Christ and Revelations and the day of the Lord, and not trying to anticipate the dates or the events in a very visceral imagery sort of way, but more to accept that our role here is to acknowledge that, yes, it's supposed to get worse, and yes, it's supposed to be bad, and yes, it's all leading to the greatest glory and the greatest beauty that's ever happened on this earth, and it will be fixed forever. But to prepare for that is to acknowledge that, and to prepare for that is to do what's counterintuitive, I should say, and against our nature, which is to not try to survive it, and to not try to outgrow it and get stronger or richer than it, or be smarter than the devil, because we can't be. The idea is to indulge in the greatest gift that we've been given, which is the blood of Christ and the scriptures. So anyways, that's the kind of short answer to what I've been going through lately of how to approach the elections. I'm going to get on to some other stuff. This was kind of a rambly video because, as I said, I've been struggling to come up with a topic, but I hope that this video was interesting to you. All right, I love you guys, and God bless. Take care. Bye.